Alrighty.
Hell yeah.
Welcome. Ooh,
Welcome.
It clipped because I screamed it.
Oh.
Welcome to Harrow Podcast, Episode 2. This is going to be the second one.
Number 2.
Thank you for listening. My name is Kevin. For those of you who do not know me here, I'm here with my good friend, Dylan Pritchard.
Hello.
Hello,
world. Hello, podcast world.
Than's for being here.
No, thank you.
Oh,
This is great.
You're very welcome.
This is great. We just ate a lot of pizza.
We did.
Yeah.
From you want to tell the crew
Oh,
where?
we got vegan pizzas from Uncle Oogies.
Uncle Oogies.
Big Oogie.
Out of Philadelphia.
Out of Philadelphia, PA.
Uncle Oogie.
Straight up.
Yeah. And what's Oogie's catchphase? Just tell give a taste.
Oogie's catchphrase, apparently, which is what we have coined for Oogie, is whoopsie.
Oogie.
Oogie. Oh,
and
man.
it says it on the pizza box. It's Uncle Oogie's Pizza. And quotations, whoopsie.
They should really be paying us for this.
They should.
Yeah.
Seriously, good pizza, so well done.
Free advertisement.
All right, Dylan, I'm going to give you a little intro. Dylan is a multifaceted artist based out of Philadelphia. How do you like that? They are a fashion designer, a painter, a musician, a coffee maker, and also one of my best buds.
Aw.
So that's
so nice.
And that there's probably some other things to describe your whole being there, but that's kind of the best I can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'd say that's pretty apt. I'd say that makes the most sense.
Oh.
So, what I hear you got some questions for me today.
I do. I prepared some things to
Yeah.
talk about. You know, ordinarily this is we've talked about music
Yeah.
on the podcast here in the past, and we're gonna do a little bit of that, but I'm excited for this because we'll talk about some other things too, like art and fashion, that kind of thing too. So
Oh yeah. Now, before we get into anything, we should give a little bit of a backstory about how we know each other.
Actually, that is a good thing. I had that written down. You want to do that now?
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
Do it now. You want to talk about when we first kind of came into each other's lives?
Yeah. Okay. So it was right after your birthday. Right?
No, it was on my birthday.
It was
actually.
on your birthday.
That was my birthday.
Oh my God, that's so special.
I know. It's
okay,
a
so
great
it was
night.
on your birthday.
Remember the year?
It was 2016.
It was 2016.
So it was October, right?
It was October.
Yeah, October in 2016, and we met at the Joyce Manor show that was happening at the church, the First Unitarian Church. Yeah, it was a great show.
Great show.
It was great.
I went with Pat. It was like, we got to do something great for my 21st birthday. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been a little bit after my birthday. Maybe it wasn't actually on my birthday, but it was in October.
Oh, so you misled me.
I misled you there.
Oh, that feels
totally
lied.
horrible. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
Whatever it was, that's the reason we went. We're like, we got to do something cool. Joyce Manor's playing. Let's go. Our great friend Augie went to that show, and you were with Augie. You guys went together.
Yeah, I showed up and I met Augie there. And then I got introduced to you, and I found out that you and Pat were both in stippling. And I was like, oh, that's incredible, because I love stippling. I'd been listening to stippling for probably 4 or 5 months at the time.
Yeah.
This was shortly after I moved to Philadelphia. It was like a few months after I had moved here or whatever. And I had gotten into stippling through, I think it was like the Funeral Sounds Bandcamp.
Was it really?
Probably.
I think I knew that, yeah.
Yeah. Because I was just looking through the different artists off the Bandcamp. It was either their Bandcamp or it was like their Tumblr or something that was linked to their Bandcamp for some reason I was following. But yeah, so I had listened to that first album that you had put out like really extensively and really enjoyed it. And then after showing up at the show, and I realized like, oh, these are the two kids that are in stippling, and I was like, oh, that's incredible. And so of course, like, I introduced myself, or Augie introduced us. I don't even remember anything.
You were I think you were just smoking a cig outside.
Yeah, probably.
And Augie introduced us, and we were talking about like stippling and music.
Yeah.
And you had just moved to the city, and we were like, how are you liking it? I think because it was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, I had moved to Philadelphia in August. So I hadn't been there that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we hung out that night. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great.
A great night. Joyce Manor was awesome. I remember that a couple, like Hotelier played. Is that right?
It was like the Hotelier,
Which
and
I didn't care about.
Crying.
And Crying, which was, I missed the set, but I do like that band.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's when we started becoming friends there.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, you and Pat started your own band.
Yeah, because I moved to Philadelphia originally with the idea of just overall moving to a new place, but also like moving to Philadelphia to play music, to meet people, and to like sort of cultivate my own little like thing. I don't know. So whenever I moved to Philly, shortly after, because I started going to shows like really religiously, I started going to so many shows, and eventually I found a drummer to help me out. I was playing guitar at the time. I was trying to write some songs, and so I found a drummer who was Luke, and we hit it off. We had like some practices, and I still needed a bassist. I needed someone to do bass and vocals. And so that's why I was really stoked whenever I met both you and Pat, because I know that Pat did bass and vocals in Stippling. And so after that night, and after having like a good time and meeting you both, that's when I hit Pat up online, and I was like, hey, would you be interested in playing music sometime? And then Pat was just, for whatever reason, Pat was just like, yes, absolutely. And so
I feel like at that point in Pat's life, you could have asked them to do anything.
Yeah, probably.
Like, oh, yeah, sure.
But for me, it was really like, it was like a small blessing, you know, because I was so in love with that Stippling record. I thought it was just,
I'm glad.
I thought it was just so good. It was one of like my favorite things that had come out of Philadelphia at the time. It was probably one of my favorite records of the year. And just to have Pat say to me like, yeah, I'll totally be in your band, whatever, was just like, it was mind-blowing to me at the time, you know.
That's so cool.
Especially
with
me being so new to Philly and trying to sort of acclimate myself to the environment and really like start a band and be in a band, which I had been in multiple bands before, but they were never in major cities.
Right.
It was always just me with like the few friends that I knew or had that we would all just come together and just work on a project together. But we all just had sort of like this crazy amount of different ideas about genre and really what we wanted to accomplish. And nothing ever really went anywhere very far.
Right.
So yeah, to be able to have like a very specific genre that I wanted to go for, and to meet you guys and talk to Pat and actually officially start that band, which was Cavity Kids. It was great. It felt great, and I made some great friends along the way. So
it was good.
That's probably the best part about
it. I want to talk a little bit more about Cavity Kids moving on here, but actually let's give a little bit of a background here, because this is a very interesting story of how you moved to Philadelphia and kind of restarted and entered into the music scene. For those listeners who don't know, we're going to let everybody know where you're from.
Oh, right,
and
yeah.
kind of just maybe a little bit. I don't know how much in depth you want to go, but maybe talk about like some of the things you did. Back where you're from.
Oh man, there's a lot. So I'll give like a quick synopsis. So I'm from North Carolina, specifically a very small rural town in North Carolina where there's basically nothing. Like nothing exists there. It's just kind of whatever. So I kind of just grew up on the internet and like finding out about music on the internet and figuring out what I was really into. And I don't know, I've definitely vibed with tons of different genres over the years. I just kind of go from one being super into it to the next and being super into it. But yeah, I started playing drums like 11 years ago when I lived in North Carolina, and I was in a few different bands that were mostly metal bands. And then I started moving around a little bit in North Carolina. I moved to the coast. I made some new friends and started some different projects with them that ended up being more emo, where I was still playing drums. And in one of those bands, I was playing drums and doing vocals.
Left hand?
That was left hand. Yeah.
And did you have the beard then? Did you have the beard?
I had a beard then, yes.
Dylan had a beard back then?
Very large beard.
Most folks don't know that, but
it's very embarrassing.
Dresser stained by makeup. Well, I left the
But yeah, so I was in Left Hand for probably maybe a year and a half or so, and I came out of being in Left Hand wanting to learn how to play the guitar, because I wanted to, because being a drummer, it ends up being really difficult, I feel like, whenever you're trying to be extremely creative with the music that you're creating, but obviously you're only playing percussion. Like, there's only so much that you can do, which, like, a drummer is super important and super valuable in a band, you know, definitely like the heart of the band. But for me personally, I feel like I had a lot more to say. I felt like I needed to express myself creatively in different ways. So I started learning how to play the guitar, I think in God, what year was it? It was like 2015. So not even that long ago. It was like 5 years ago. Yeah, and then from there, I just started doing singer-songwriter stuff.
Right.
And whenever I first started...
Sad movies, right?
No, before that, actually, there was a band that I spearheaded called Good Going.
Okay. I remember that.
Where I didn't have a whole lot of technical ability at the time, so I just wrote out like the bare bones, the structures of songs, and just like with the normal chords and stuff. And I had a couple friends who helped me to grow that project into like a full EP.
Like under bed sheets with no comfort or company. And I'm not asking you now, 'cause I'm asking myself. And I can live without knowing how it sees you in your coffee stains sweat.
But yeah, after Good Going broke up, I had to move away from the coast. I moved back in with my parents for a short amount of time to try to collect myself, to like gather my life and figure out what I wanted to do. And that's when I was writing the singer-songwriter stuff, like sad movies. And I think I just did some like random small like offshoots of things like here and there that I might have just thrown them up on Bandcamp, or they just might not even exist anymore. I'm not sure. But during the time that I was doing that and writing music in that sphere, I was like sort of developing a plan of what I wanted to do with my life and like where I wanted to move, because I knew that I wanted to move out of the South.
And what year is this too?
This was still 2015.
2015, okay.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to when you moved.
Yeah. So throughout all of 2015, I was just trying to write music that was appealing to me, but at the same time, I knew the area that I was in, it wouldn't really be possible for me to, I don't know, like kind of elevate anything or take anything to the next level in playing music, because there just wasn't really a scene. It's just kind of like barren, in where I grew up and ultimately where I was right before I moved. So I made the plan to move to Philadelphia to sort of expand on my ideas and see if I could start a band and really like integrate myself into a music scene. And then in August of 2016, I finally had enough money saved up, and then I moved to Philly. Yeah. So that's how it happened.
And here we are.
And here we are. In 2020.
No, I always like that story, because like when we first met, you told me a version of that story.
Right.
We were just like hanging out in your old apartment, and I was like, damn, I wouldn't feel so confident to just move to a completely new city or town or something and just completely kind of start fresh. That kind of thing. So I always thought that was really cool. And then Cavity Kid started.
Right.
So you met me and Pat. You were like, oh, okay, Pat and Kevin are pretty cool. Fuck Kevin, let's start a band with Pat.
Well, I mean, I gravitated more towards.
I'm kidding.
You know why? I mean, I gravitated more towards Pat because
I'm just not as good. It's okay.
I needed the bass, and Pat is very good at bass.
That's true.
So
I'm absolutely kidding. Great band, 2 albums, right?
So we put out 2 albums, and then we disbanded last year. I think it was actually March-ish. So it's been like a little bit over a year
So, I mean, before getting like too specific into it, obviously you're doing a lot of creative things besides music right now. Like you're doing art and you're doing fashion.
Mm-hmm.
As far as somebody who is not playing music as much right now, like how do you feel looking back on those 2 records?
Oh, that's a great question. Hold on, I'm gonna pop this.
I get that sound effect in there. That's always that's bonus points right there.
I wonder if they can.
You could hear that, right? AT4040 could get the fizz.
You
Yeah,
can hear the fizz.
that's actually on the box of the AT4040. can get the fizz.
Nice.
In fact, I'll probably need to get a new one pretty soon.
Yeah. So the question was, like looking back on Cavity Kids.
Yes.
Specifically,
as somebody who's not necessarily doing a lot of music right now, I was curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on those 2 records?
I think honestly, in preparation for the podcast today, while I was at work, I wear headphones while I'm working, doing my production job. And I just went back and listened to the majority of the music that I made, like throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I listened to both of those records, which I don't listen to very often. And they kind of slap.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're great.
I'm glad you think that because they do.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I look back at them. I mean, I can't speak on how anyone else viewed them or whatever from the band, but I don't know. I look back at them and I say like, damn, some of that stuff I'm like, I can't believe I did that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
difficult to put a lot of effort into those.
Yeah, the first record, it's wild because the first record is 10 tracks. I think two of them are instrumental. So it's like 8 tracks and 2 instrumentals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's a couple transition things.
Yeah. And we wrote that entire first record and recorded it within the first 6 months of Pat joining the band.
Wow. Whenever
Pat joined the band, it was just me and Luke, and we had, I think, like 1.5 songs. So we really like set into it hard and just kind of like pumped it out, you know.
And that was recorded in was that UArts?
We recorded that at UArts.
It was UArts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a great experience. It was it's probably really great for Pat as well because Pat recorded and mixed the whole thing, you know. Yeah, it was a good time. So we did that, and then the second record was just so much more. I don't know. To me, it's definitely more mature of a record. It's definitely a different sound, but it took like 2 years to make.
It was more of an arduous process, I'd say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. With the first record, everything had sort of like a flow and an ease to it that we were just like pumping out songs, you know, just like it was like nothing. And then with the second record, I know that I personally had a lot of trouble with writing stuff that I thought was good enough, because I would always write riffs and try to expand on them, and then I would just be like, oh, this sucks, and I would just toss them, you know. And for me, I was like, you know what, this band is super important to me, so I want to make the record as good as possible. Right. And so that's why it took like 2 years for us to make that our second record, which is another just like 10 tracks.
And you're more present in that anyway. Like the second one is considerably more Dylan.
Right, yeah.
It's very like...
Well, I mean, yeah. I feel like my presence is always there because I wrote and constructed all of the songs with minor changes from Luke and from Pat coming in and being like, oh, what if we did this here? Or we like switch this part up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more me in the vocal front. Yeah. On the second record. It's kind of it's almost like a 50-50 split between me and Pat, which is where like the first record was more like Pat was like 75% and I was like 25%. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I guess that's more what I meant. Yeah. Vocally, more halfway split. Mm-hmm. Actually, I mean, looking back on it, my memory tells me it was more you even than Pat, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's split up pretty evenly because that's kind of how we planned it overall. But I don't know. Maybe I'll have to listen to it again. Okay. I'm not sure.
No, I'm glad. For some reason, I wasn't expecting you to have that reaction to re-listening to those albums. I was thinking... they're great albums. I just thought you might be listening to them and feeling like, I don't know.
They don't really make me sad or anything. I don't really feel like super like heavy nostalgia or anything. Yeah, I whenever I was listening through them today, I was just like, damn, dude, I can't believe, I just really can't believe that we did this. Like, this is super killer. And I know that like not a lot of people have like heard these records or whatever, but I was just super glad to be a part of it and make the friends that I did, you know. And honestly, like by the end of Cavity Kids, we'd had such a hard time writing that second record, and it took, since it was like almost a 2-year process, like I was just so like overwhelmed with writing music in general that having the band sort of break up or disband or whatever you want to call it, just like call it quits, was almost like a relief to me. You know, I know that not everybody shares that same sentiment, like everybody who was involved, but to me it was like a weight had been lifted off of me, like this stress of having to really like pump out this incredible like artistic endeavor or whatever in terms of making a record.
That's like the whole idea of a sophomore album, is like you happen, because with Stippling I related to your position too, because it's like you have this first record and it's received well and people really like it and it's fun and it's almost like better than you thought it would come out. It's almost like, oh shit, it's actually really good. I mean, I didn't think it would be bad, but
I actually think that the first Cavity Kids record is better now than what I thought about it right after we made it. And I think that's just because I was being like super self-critical. I know that other people probably heard it and they were like, oh, this is good or this is fine or whatever. But re-listening to it now, like having been so many years removed from making it, I'm like, damn, this is actually really good. Like, I'm super stoked that I actually made this.
Because whenever you're in a band, like the first album is almost not incidental, but like you don't really have things planned out.
It's a little bit experimental.
And the second one, you're like, this is our sound. It's already been kind of established.
Right,
Now where are we going to take that? And there's this, all of a sudden there's this expectation.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's where a lot of bands fall short. Or you notice that, you know, that super like trendy thing of like, oh, I only listen to their older stuff or whatever. Their older stuff's better, you know. It's just because like the first record that a band comes out with is essentially, unless they're all like super mathematically minded and they're all like super smart and they just like figure out how to make this orchestral wonderful masterpiece or something, like the first album that a band comes out with is usually going to be like, it's going to cross that line of just kind of like experimentation.
Right.
So you're going to like get this mixture and this nuance of like all these different influences like sort of coming together to make what is the first full product that a band puts out. And then anything else that they put out after that, it's like you said, like there's this expectation to perform, so that everything is a little bit more stressful, and it's like it's really difficult to like get everybody to come together and kind of like work collectively on it to put out something that's, you know, feels free and easy. And I don't know.
So was that your thought process? Because it sort of was for me too, but like, what was your thought? Were you putting the stress on yourself to make this kind of...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like any outside
Right.
factor.
Yeah. I was putting a lot of stress on myself to write the songs and have them be as good as I could possibly make them, you know, which seems like it makes sense on one hand, but on the other hand seems like kind of ridiculous, because I can only make them as good as I feel like they can be, you know. It's kind of like a moot point. But I was putting stress on myself to make the songs really good. Luke was stressed out because I was delving into territory that he didn't quite understand musically. You know, like, of course he's the drummer and he's an excellent drummer, and he knows exactly like what to do during most parts of most songs, you know. But I feel like there was a little bit of like odd tweaks and like dissonance in the second record that were not present in the first record, that kind of like threw him off. So he was stressed because he felt like he should be doing more to contribute for his part, or he like, you know, so he could like figure out or understand exactly how to make the song better on his end. And then Pat was, I think, just stressed out from having, honestly, probably like having vocal responsibility. I mean, it was probably a little bit more than that. I think there might have been some like outside factors or
at the time they were probably
but...
interested in a lot of bands too.
And also there's that. There's just the overwhelming stress of being in like multiple bands and trying to juggle your creative process, you know. So, but overall, I mean, even with all of those things in place, like all of these stressors and like sort of the challenges that presented themselves to us while we were making the record, we still made it. You know, it took like 2 years, but we still like pulled it together and made it and recorded it and mastered it and everything. And
you feel like you can appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good record.
Right.
I really enjoy it. And I'm glad that I do, because there's definitely stuff like music that I've made in the past where I could listen to it, and even some of the stuff I was talking about to you earlier, where I was going back and listening to all the older bands that I've been in, all the small like solo projects that I've done and stuff, and some of it's just like really cringy.
Right.
Yeah. Some of it I listen to and I'm just like, oh no, why did I say that? Or like
I feel the same way about certain things.
But it's all good.
Should we not talk about what they are or anything like that, so people can't find it?
I mean, you can.
It's a secret.
I mean, I don't really care. There are a lot.
Yeah.
There's so many.
I do want to point out that you had a project called Sad Movies.
Yes.
Which is eerily similar to movies.
Yes. Because it's basically the same thing.
Exactly. Before we knew each other. So
well, movies is better than the thing that I did. Well, the Sad Movies.
Well, that's debatable.
Sad Movies as a project I did. So that was 2015 when that came out, and it was only like 6 songs.
Was it like, just one release?
Yeah, it was just one release. It was like 6 or 7 songs, and some of that stuff I included on a compilation of stuff that I felt proud about making, that I just put out on Bandcamp. It was just kind of like a whatever, like throw it on the internet type of thing in like 2017.
Yeah,
I think it was like late into 2017. I just gathered a bunch of my older material that
the compilation thing.
Yeah, my compilation record.
Right.
And so I put that on Bandcamp, and that
awesome.
Was nice. That was fun to do. It was kind of fun to
that was a nice compilation. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Sort of like collect all these things that I'm like, oh, I can be proud of these.
And that was a post Cavity Kids thing, right? Like that was after.
No, that was actually during Cavity Kids thing.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was while Cavity Kids still existed, because this was in 2017. So Cavity Kids had been a band for a little over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to give like a quick, simple explanation of why band broke up, and just like generic. You don't have to like fully get into it, but just for listeners to know why.
I feel like, honestly, I mean, I can't really like put the blame on any.
It was Dylan's
single
fault.
part. It was definitely not my fault.
It was actually my fault.
But I don't know. I feel like just getting through the second record was such a struggle, and honestly, I feel like we had all grown to a point in our lives where like it just kind of wasn't doing it anymore, you know? I wasn't really doing it for me. It wasn't really doing it for Pat. I think the only one that was really hurt by the situation and in disbanding was definitely Luke, because Luke was just all in. Like he's great. I love him.
Very positive guy.
Yeah,
if you're listening,
he's great.
Luke, I love you, buddy. Miss you.
We love you, Luke. Nah, he was always down to practice whenever. You know, it's so hard to find that in a drummer. Always down to practice.
And anybody.
Yeah, always down to drive anywhere. He had a van, so he could like bring his own equipment and stuff. He was down to play like pretty much any show. Like he was really like the ideal drummer or whatever, and he was just super invested in the band. And I think he is.
Some would say the heart and soul of the band.
Oh yeah.
Some would say.
Yeah. Nah, he was just super invested in it, and his heart was super invested in it. And I do feel bad that things ended in general because of the way that he felt about them. But honestly, I feel like for me and for Pat, it was just like time for us to go in different artistic directions.
I mean, and being in a band is like, I'm not gonna say it's exactly like it, but it is a relationship.
Yeah.
So like when you're in a relationship and one person is not getting the same enjoyment that the other person's getting, it
the
doesn't
whole
matter.
thing, the whole thing falls apart.
The whole thing falls apart, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter that the other person is having a great time because it's like, yeah, it needs to be a two-way street.
Exactly.
Or three-way street.
Oh, a three-way street in our case.
Some
yeah.
weird street.
Yeah, we were having a big
Yeah,
three-way.
It was a big three-way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cavity Kids, big three-way.
Yeah, big
for 2 years.
CK three-way.
Cavity Kids' third album is actually dropping. It's called CK Three-Way.
I mean, it could. Like, I could have still
never say never. Yeah.
been writing music, and I could have like been making songs with Luke and stuff. I just think that Pat kind of wanted to remove themselves from the picture just to pursue other things,
Sure.
And of course, like, Pat and I are still really close, so I hold no ill will towards anyone, and that's why I think when I look back on the albums, I can think about them so fondly.
That's a good thing to be able to say too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely been in bands before where, like, the band ends and you always had that one member or like multiple members or something that were always just very dramatic, or like something, they just did something horrible, or just like, there's always just like this weird tense drama between you and band members. But
No, we could put the three of you in a room and it would be
oh, it would be great. Yeah,
it'd actually be great. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, totally.
And then after that, you and I, after Cavity Kids broke up, you and I did a couple half-baked musical
We
things.
tried to work on a music project that
Did we have a name for it even? I don't
no,
think
there was
we
no
did.
name for it.
We had some song titles, but
we
didn't have a
definitely had
name.
song titles like "The Dreaming Is Mutual."
Oh,
was classic.
Toast of the Town.
The Toast of the Town. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. So just to give some background to listeners, Cavity Kids ended. I guess Stippling had ended too, and Dylan, you wanted to do. We were both listening to John Mouse a lot.
Yeah, probably.
And I think that was actually around the time we went to see John Mouse at the church, at UT.
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't it around that time?
I don't remember.
Were
if
you
it was,
there? You were
I
there,
was.
right?
I was definitely
Yeah,
there.
you were there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a fight that broke out during Cop Killer.
Oh yeah.
It was like so bizarre.
And around that same time, unrelated, but around that same time, we took that trip we went to New York to see
Cap'n Jazz.
Cap'n Jazz. Which
that was incredible.
Love that memory. So
oh,
cool.
that was so good.
It was awesome. We all kind of went.
Yeah,
in
we
my
got
car.
coffee. We went to Screamers.
It was great.
Yeah, that was great.
But anyway, John Mouse. We were both interested in John Mouse. You had done, this other kind of Prison Glitch project.
Yeah, Prison Glitch was a project with one of my former roommates. So it was just this weird, like almost industrial type of just like super hard hitting John Mousey like type of post-punk thing. I don't really even know what to call it, but yeah, it was very short-lived. It was like one song.
But we wanted to take that and kind of make it live.
Yeah.
And so I made beats and you did the vocals.
I tried. I was going to. I think there was a lot of like lethargy. There was just like there wasn't any like extreme.
I think we spent more time joking about it than actually doing
yeah,
anything.
yeah. So if anything, there's that.
But anyway,
there's always the jokes.
A couple of the beats that I used, I still have, and one of them I used, like the very first thing I used actually became a Thrill Village song. So
cool.
that was nice, yeah.
That's great.
And I still have them. I like them.
Nice.
And then when I got my bass, my Thunderbird bass, I came over your house and we.
Oh, that was during a weird time because that was right after Cavity Kids had actually ended.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Like when you Have a Nice Lifestyle song?
Yeah, where I was like trying to be like, okay, what's my next musical pursuit?
Right.
And it was very like, it wasn't necessarily extremely rough on me whenever Cavity Kids had ended, but it did leave me in a place of creative confusion.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I've just spent so much time and delved like I just put so much energy and creativity into this project for the past few years, and now it's kind of like it's gone. Like there's no continuing it. So what am I going to do from here? And I think like during the time I was just feeling kind of overwhelmed, but extremely emotional about creating art in general. And I was trying to figure out how exactly I would want to do it if I was to continue to just keep making music, And so that's when I tried to do that thing with you.
Right.
Where it was going to be very like Have a Nice Life-ish, like very like dramatic, emotional, like
we were both
huge
listening
sound.
to Death Consciousness a lot.
Yeah, probably.
That album
I feel like I'm always listening to that record.
I just remember you were like listening to that song Deep Deep.
Yeah.
And you wanted to have that song, the essence of that song, but like in band form, I feel like.
Yeah.
Which was the great song.
Yeah,
Check that
it was
out.
great.
I guess before we move on, let's maybe play a 30-second clip of if you had to choose any Cavity Kids song, here's a 30-second. Here you go.
Oh,
Here
man.
it is.
Oh, man.
Well, we could always do a couple of them, but I don't know if there's any. Quitter. What was said with you?
Quitter.
You want to do Quitter?
You can play Quitter, yeah.
All right. Here's 30 seconds of Quitter.
I'm set as fuck and I'm starting to think you're the wrong direction in your head. So you cut much, I'll be dead. You must speak to you. I'll speak to you. I'll speak to you.
We back.
Oh, yeah.
We back.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of talked about your music and everything like that, and I want to talk about, because I've always been interested, and we haven't talked too much about it, but you made a shift, and I think there was some overlap. But you started painting and doing more art related things.
Yeah, definitely more visual arts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about like why kind of that started and the inspiration for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mentioned this a little bit beforehand, but it was kind of like after my band that I had pretty much poured like all of my creative energy into over like a 3-year period had broken off and I couldn't do it anymore. I honestly like sat with myself for a really long time and I was like, do I want to keep making music? You know, it was a really tough thing, you know, because of course, I've always loved making music, and I've made music in multiple genres, and I've sort of bounced around. You know, I go from here to there, just really falling in love with different types of music, and then like wanting to emulate it and really pushing myself to try to do so. But it got to a point where, at the end of Cavity Kids, I just didn't think that I wanted to take on that kind of emotional toll again. You know, where like, I don't know, because when Cavity Kids broke off, it's like I said, like it was like kind of a relief, but also at the same time, it was a super overwhelming feeling just to lose something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, do I want to just keep doing this just because I enjoy making music? Or I don't know. It's tough. It's hard for me to create things in an artistic sense when I don't have like some sort of extreme drive.
Yeah.
Or like extreme motivation, like something has to overcome me where I have to be like, I want to do this right now. I have to get this done. Like this would be so interesting and fun for me to do. And throughout the last probably like 6 months of Cavity Kids being a thing, that feeling really started to fade, like really heavily.
Right.
So whenever Cavity Kids had ended, I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this, at least right now. You know, I can't just keep making music without the drive to make it, because ultimately I'm not going to be happy with it. It's just going to feel pointless, you know?
Sure.
So what I did from there, actually for a very, very short stint, a very short period of time, I was like, I delved into doing a little bit of like interesting graphic art or like digital art, you know? So I was like making these strange, like sort of black and white images where I was like cutting and pasting things together or whatever using Photoshop and just putting them on Instagram and being like, oh, this is my digital art or whatever. And I had always had a passive interest in visual arts in general, but I was always so attracted to music throughout my whole life that I kind of put visual arts to the side because I wanted to learn as much as I could about music. So coming out of Cavity Kids and trying to delve into a visual art in general, I just expanded from there. I just started watching documentaries about artists. I started like reading Wikipedia pages about various artists, you know, just like famous artists throughout history and like why their pieces are important and what makes the art interesting and stuff like that, you know? And ultimately what I came out of that with was this fever, like this desire to start making a bunch of visual arts.
Right.
And so that's what I did, you know, and I have no previous experience. Like I'm like self-taught, even though I don't really have like a super interesting technique or anything. I just kind of do whatever I feel comes natural to me
Sure.
when it comes to painting and making visual arts in general. And yeah, I just like for a solid 6 months straight, I would say I was just painting like all the time.
You put a lot of content, and I know
Yeah.
it started with the entirely removed like Instagram thing, right?
Right,
That was-
yeah.
that
Like
was
it was the digital art first.
yeah,
And then once I realized I could expand that and start doing things physically, that attracted me much more.
yeah.
There's something really appealing about like physically finishing a painting as opposed to making digital art.
Right, and
you
that's
know?
something you've talked to me about before too.
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
And it's a different satisfaction than making music, I'm sure too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
Yeah, because you're not relying on anyone else to have like this finished product. Not saying that you always have to do that in music. I mean, I've made a lot of music on my own, just all my solo stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, there is something oddly satisfying about like just doing a painting from start to finish, like spending an entire week, or either spending like a day or spending an entire week on it, you know, and then like finishing it and looking at it and being like, I just made that,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like a physical entity. It's a physical thing that exists in the world that you could like pick up and take around places. It's just like it's a wild concept, but yeah, I really leaned in super hard into doing visual arts.
And you were pretty inspired by, I guess, a lot of different artists too. But I remember it was like Jean-Michel.
Yeah. I watched like I had always had this like kind of weird like passive interest, like I said, in those like super famous artists. And so I watched Basquiat documentary.
Okay, Basquiat. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, his whole life was just wild, and just like the way that he would produce his art, and just like the way that he went about it, and just like the ideas that came out of him in general were just so profound, you know. And I was like, damn, I would love to do something like that. And so I sort of took that idea and ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started just painting, just nonstop. I probably painted like anywhere from 50 to 60 paintings in a 6-month span.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was like
no, there was a lot, and when you moved into the place we're in here in your current house,
Mm-hmm.
you're a dedicated studio,
right. Yeah,
to
yeah.
it,
I
which
had
was-
the painting studio.
which was really cool.
Yeah.
And you posted pretty much all these paintings. It was a lot of content. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And was that did that kind of completely eclipse the musical desire that was once there that kind of faded
I
a
feel
little
like
bit?
I don't know if eclipse would be the right word, and I don't know if like replaced would be the right word. The way that I've gone about my interests throughout my whole life, I feel like is kind of bizarre. I feel like it's not normal, because I will just get super like dedicated and
Down to dedicate.
and fit down to dedicate. Yeah, I'll get super fixated on like this one idea, or doing this one type of art, or like really emulating this one type of like artist, this one type of music, like really doing it, and I just go really hard on it
Yeah.
for like however long. It could be like 6 months, it could be like 3 years, you know. And then somewhere along the way, there's just a transition from that fixation to another one.
Sure.
And like looking back and like listening to all my old music and looking at all my art and like thinking about the things that I've done, the love that I have for everything that I've done, and it is still there, you know. And especially like the wonderment of being like, I can't believe that I did all this.
Yeah.
Like this is so wild to me, because right now I feel like if I tried to fully recreate something that I did like 6 years ago, you know, whether music, art, whatever, I feel like I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't know. It's so strange.
Is it? What do you think it is? Is it like a constant? Is it an identity search, or is it like a, I guess, kind of not wanting to retread on old ground, kind of thing? Because you're obviously like on this path,
Mm-hmm.
sort of, and you're kind of filtering through these different things.
Mm-hmm.
How would you best characterize that, or is that?
I don't really know.
Like, is it just that like you would just get bored of doing the same old thing, so you got to move on to the next challenge? Like, you're trying to challenge yourself?
Yeah, I
with
don't
these
think
new
it's
things?
boredom. I think it's always wanting to, kind of have like a creative challenge.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's like the process that I'm really involved in and that I really love. It's the process of doing things rather than just having the end result.
Yeah.
It's more like the reason why I loved making music was the process of writing the songs. The reason why I loved making visual arts was the process from start to finish, like making an entire huge like 40 by 60 inch painting,
Yeah.
And right now it's the process that I'm going through in learning how to make garments.
Sure.
And I think that that's always what has drawn me in and has fascinated me about doing art in general. It's usually never the end result, and it's really interesting to think about. But
That's interesting, because I never really thought of that, because from an outside perspective, it's like, well, Dylan is doing all this cool stuff, and it's like you're going from this thing to, like, I never would have guessed that you would have become interested in the fashion thing and started that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's I guess it makes more sense when I think about it, where it's like, why retread over old ground?
Yeah, it makes logical sense to me as the next step in being a creator.
Yeah.
In general. Because I got involved in like wanting to know a lot more and like heavily delving into fashion at around the same time that I started getting into visual arts and painting. So yeah, it's just been this slow and gradual process of me sort of figuring out what I wanted to do overall when it comes to art and what I would love to do to pursue to like, have as a career.
Yeah.
Essentially. And the most viable option when it comes down to it is fashion design.
So was that more of a career kind of thinking, or less
I feel like it was
creative?
both, because there's so much that I'm intrigued by about fashion and about creating garments in general. Like there's so many like there's so many intricacies and complexities,
Yeah.
that you don't even you don't normally think about unless you're making clothes. It's really wild. It's really interesting.
So when did you start really thinking about fashion as in that way? Was it while you were still doing the art stuff? I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. So while I was making a bunch of visual art, I had applied to go to art school. So I had applied to go to University of the Arts.
UArts, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I got accepted. I got a scholarship. I got some federal grants, and I
you
got
threw
some
it all
federal
away.
loans. But
No, I'm kidding.
I still would have had to pay way too much money out of pocket to go to school. And luckily, I'm very fortunate enough to where my parents were going to help me out with the out-of-pocket cost, but it was going to be such a huge commitment. And I'm at a stage in my life where like I'm close to 30, and making that type of a 4-year commitment where I wouldn't be able to work, I would just be super broke all the time. Overall, I realized like I don't want to live that life.
Yeah.
Like that's not something that's viable for me right now at the age that I am and like with what I really want to do. But I held on to the scholarship for like a while, and I held on to the idea that like, oh, I'll still go and like it'll reignite kind of like this fading like love that I had, or this energy, this like constant energy that I had to create visual art or whatever, because that was slowly kind of transitioning into me like developing a personal style and sort of like getting super into fashion as an art concept, and I was like watching a lot of these runway shows, like a lot of stuff that's like super artistic or avant-garde, or just looking up things about fashion in general and trying to learn as much as I could about it. And so I ultimately turned down going to the university, and I'll be enrolling in an independent fashion school at Made Institute here in Philly in like 2 months. So it starts in September.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm super stoked about that because it's way less expensive. It's like astronomically cheaper. It's a lot less of a commitment because it's only an 18-month program, and it's going to give me all the information, all the knowledge, and all the technical skill that I need in order to do what I really want to do, which is like make garments and sell them.
Start a brand.
And start a brand, yeah. And they teach you. They kind of like go through the process of teaching you how to build your brand, and like,
gotcha.
They have you make a website. They work with you on making your like logo design and stuff, which some of that stuff I already understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like when it comes down to the technicality of making clothing and just the general knowledge and stuff, I think it'll be really exciting to go to school and
that is cool.
Figure all that out.
So I mean, I'm trying to think as you the word you used was transition from art to the fashion thing, but are you still doing art? Are you still painting?
I haven't done a painting in about 2 months.
Right, but that's not super long.
It's not super long, but if you consider the rate at which I was painting, that seems like
it's definitely slowed down.
Yeah, it's definitely slowed down a lot.
Do you consider art still part of your active wheelhouse?
My active wheelhouse, no, but because it had such an integral effect like on me, I feel like it'll just always be a part of me. It'll always be like a part of my life, and it's always something that I could do again if I like, if something ignites.
So it sounds like the music thing where you're looking back on it fondly and you could go back to it, but right now you have this
right now
focus.
I just like I'm delving all my energy and focus into like, okay, I'm about to go to school. I'm like prototyping garments at the moment that I really want to make. I'm doing fashion illustrations.
You got the YouTube channel too?
I do have a YouTube channel, yeah, but I don't know how much longer I'll be in the YouTube game. I made
a hard
like
game to be in. Man.
I made like 2 YouTube videos, and then from then on I was just like, yeah, I just my interest just went to other things,
Right.
I was like, I've been there, done that. I could continue to do it, but it's not my thing.
As far as like expression, obviously you can express yourself by writing songs and everything like that, and you can express yourself with painting as well. How does that translate to fashion? Do you feel like you're able to get that self-expression out in the same way?
Oh, fashion is the ultimate form of self-expression. If you think about it, if you think about the way that you dress and the way that you carry yourself, it's literally the way that you dress is how you present yourself to the world, to the public, to anyone that sees you.
Yeah.
So and to have like sort of an artistic mindset about that, I think is really interesting and really cool, and should be like an important thing. I think everybody should care about the way that they dress, about the way that they present themselves.
I think it's an extremely underdeveloped concept because the people who are really into it are into it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. There's always going to be specialists in certain areas. But as far as like the masses, like everybody gets why music is so important.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody gets why art is so important, but I don't think fashion is necessarily appreciated the way it should be.
And it really sucks because well that's primarily because fast fashion has kind of taken over the world and made clothing like so cheap.
You mean like overproduced Old Navy
stuff that you find like in those department stores, or like just whenever you can go out and buy a t-shirt retail for like $4.
Shout outs to Old Navy. Sorry, buddy.
I don't know, economically and stuff, it's just horrible for multiple reasons, but a large reason being like the use of slave labor.
Sure.
Or the use of child labor, or whoever is working on these garments like overseas that are not getting paid like hardly anything.
You definitely underpaid at
to make these things. And not only that, like the garments themselves suffer from that. So like you'll have these garments that are sent over, like if you've ever bought like a shirt from H&M, it's probably like fallen apart within like 4 months of you wearing it, because it's just bad. The stuff is just bad quality, it's cheap, and it's made by garment workers who are severely underpaid and like not treated well. And that's the world of fast fashion. And I think that that's really skewed everybody's perspective, at least in like the United States, probably.
Yeah.
It's like skewed everybody's perspective about clothing and like how it should be and what it should be and what it should represent, you know?
Does it fall apart too because they want you to buy more clothes, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Like,
just
probably.
poorly constructed because they're
Okay.
just like, when you think about those mass quantities
Yeah.
of clothes that places like Walmart get in and stuff, you know, all that stuff is made so fast. They're not looking for imperfections while they're making it.
Yeah.
You know, things are just being stitched together as fast as possible, and they're being shipped out as fast as possible so that they can be sold as fast as possible. So there's no like care and consideration taken into the garment. And the garment worker doesn't care. They're just trying to pump out the product so that they can try to get, you know,
Yeah.
paid. Because a lot of those people are paid off of like the product that they make. You know, the more that you make, the more you get paid. So yeah, well, it's a terrible industry. And I mean I've kind of strayed away from fast fashion for like a while now, but I now ultimately like today in this day and age,
Yeah.
I would never buy fast fashion again. Yeah.
And where do you get your clothes right now?
Oh, right now, I purchase a lot of my clothes secondhand.
Yeah.
Either thrift or I buy them off of Grailed, which is just like a used menswear website. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I purchase is made generally from a lot of Asian countries. They're all like these sort of smaller brands that make this really very specific style of like streetwear, where it's like a lot of it's like very technical, functional, and almost utilitarian clothing,
Right.
or whatever. Yeah, and there are a few brands like that. There's some brands like in Ukraine that I've purchased from.
Is it like industrial is the way to describe?
Not necessarily industrial. I would stick more to like technical and utilitarian.
Utilitarian. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because that's what I identify with. That's like a within my personal style and what I find interesting about clothing. But yeah, and so I mean, knowing all this about clothing and stuff in general, I think the average amount of money that I spend on a garment is probably around anywhere between $100 to $150.
And that's crazy because people are not used to that, and it's people don't want to shell out that cash for money.
Yeah,
or for clothing.
Yeah, for clothing. Yeah. Well, they're not used to it. They're not used to things being more expensive because they're not used to buying things that haven't been made with slave labor.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so all the garments, everything that they've ever bought, like in their life, has probably just been like a cheap whatever. That
Well, it's
just
supposed to use $8 for a shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the stuff that I buy is very like purposeful. I know that it's going to be good quality when I buy it, and that's why I'm fine with like shelling out a little bit more money to purchase something that I know I'm going to be really happy with, that like fits into my wardrobe, goes with my style. Yeah.
That's so when you talked about self-expression through fashion, it's just something I definitely wish that I can connect with. I totally get it. I wish I could like get more involved in that.
You totally should. I mean, the fashion world is like crazy and huge and really interesting in general, but yeah, I would highly recommend.
And just so listeners know, I'm right now I'm wearing a Glockamora shirt that I've had since.
But it is really cool.
It is really cool. I got the approval from Dylan, but it's probably from 2013 or 14. I have to say, we were talking about we'll talk about other stuff too, but I wanted to mention this. Fall and winter fashion is much easier to look cool,
right?
than
Yeah.
summer, because t-shirts, who could look really cool in a t-shirt? Well, now that I said it, I'm probably wrong, right?
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but also like graphic tees suck, right?
well, I mean, it depends. I think graphic tees can be fine if the print is interesting, but that's me personally. I mean,
Okay.
a lot of people have no problem with graphic
So not
tees.
like a Heinz ketchup bottle
Oh no,
or a Superman logo.
Well, I mean, when something's like kitschy and whatever like
Yeah.
that. You know, I mean, nobody's wearing that
If
for
you wear
style.
that, I hate you. Okay.
Nice.
Anyway, I forget what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, so as far we were talking about self-expression.
Mhm.
When you would paint, though,
Mhm.
do you feel like you can get things out and express yourself in a way that fashion couldn't, or vice versa? Like, does fashion get out something, a self-satisfying feeling
I think
that art didn't?
I think that they're so different because fashion, in a sense, for expression, is a lot more methodical. It's a lot more constructive based, or you know, like if you're thinking about the outfit that you're gonna wear and you want to like look as good as you can while you're wearing a certain outfit, you're gonna like methodically put the pieces together, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that your proportions look good, you know, and make sure everything like fits you properly and stuff like that. I feel like for me personally, when it came to doing the paintings, I just do everything sort of subconsciously.
Yeah.
Where I just would subconsciously, wherever a lot of the time, yeah, I would just be slapping paints onto a canvas in just whatever shape like came to my wrist at the time.
Yeah.
And then I would map it out from there and then go in and fine tune the details later. Like it is really weird. I have a really weird paint process that I don't think a lot of people really do. It's basically because I have no like taught technique.
Yeah.
But I think it creates for some interesting moments for
There
sure.
should be a wrong or right way to do it.
Yeah,
I guess,
exactly.
right?
And I mean, there isn't.
But as far as like emotional expression, and that's something I'm always interested in, because
Right, yeah.
I need that in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, how would I be able to go on without being able to express emotionally?
Right, yeah.
Where does that fit in with you?
Oh, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I've done, it's usually with very high contrasting colors, because I really like the clash of a bunch of different colors thrown onto the same image, but placed in a way that makes sense, that doesn't really like detract your eye in any certain direction. And I feel like even the color choices that I use for particular paintings, when I have a particular idea, a lot of the time just come off as sort of like emotional confusion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like this primary red and blue like mixtures, like things that are warm and things that are cold and things that like shouldn't make sense when you put them together, but somehow I would still do it and I would feel like, yes, this is right. Like I know that this is right. This is what I want to do. And by the end of the painting, everything looks purposeful.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like it makes total sense. But to me, I'm just kind of like feeling like I want that color. I want that color.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't really tell you why.
Right.
You know, it's just that's just.
But that gratifies you. So like if you're
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you're feeling some type of way and you're like, I need to paint.
Yeah.
That does yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's more about like the emotional fulfillment of getting an idea across. Like whenever I have a spark of an idea for painting, where I would be like, oh, that would be amazing if I could paint that, and I would go in and just sort of like quickly try to do whatever it was I was thinking about, and I would generally feel like, yeah, it would be a very gratifying feeling to like get my point across.
And that's interesting to do it without words too. I mean, as a musician, it's like we write lyrics too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
such a surface level way of approaching some things sometimes. And I was talking to Brian in the last podcast about a couple movie songs that were instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking back on it, like so glad that I did an instrumental song, because sometimes you can express things really without words in a much more direct
Yeah.
way.
I feel like words, honestly, not all the time, but in a lot of cases, can skew the perception of the music and what the emotional intent behind the music can represent.
Maybe
you know,
yeah.
Because music is a very emotional art form. It's like if I played you a D minor right now, the room would immediately be sad.
I'd start crying.
Yeah, exactly. So, but think
Shout out to D
about if you're playing like a minor chord or minor chord progression or something that feels really down, but your lyrics are just like nonsense, or they're like not
Happy?
even maybe happy, maybe just like disgusting, like I don't know, but overall it feels like a lot of times words can kind of ruin something. And I
Yeah.
think that that's why it's really hard. I think writing lyrics in general is like, or trying to write really good lyrics is like, it's very difficult to do. I don't
It's
know.
a hard
I
job,
still
yeah.
I still feel like I've never been great at it. I mean, I liked writing music in the way of, you know, constructing songs, and I did enjoy doing vocals and stuff, but when it came to writing lyrics, I feel like I didn't really put a whole lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I just always felt like it was just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like really hard for me. For some people it's not at all, and that's great, but
Do you think you would ever do music again? In some
I
capacity?
really I don't know. I was thinking about it because I was listening to all my old stuff earlier this morning, you know, and a lot of it was really sad. A lot of it was like really emotional for me. And I was thinking like, damn, you know, I think it really just depends on, for me personally, when it comes to creating music, there has to be some sort of greater inspiration, some sort of life event, something that will really like spark that creativity or that drive to really want to
Yeah.
create a musical project, you know. So for right now, I really can't say, but I am glad that I have had all the experience that I've had in making music, because that means that if I do ever feel that again, like I can just easily go back to it.
Well, I guess that depends on what your goal is too, because I was talking about this too, about creating music as a means of making it or like becoming recognized.
Oh, like for a career path.
For a career path, or just for like recognition, or
Right, for the clout.
something larger, for the
Yeah,
clout.
for the clout, yeah.
Like if you're okay with the fact that your music is just for you, and you know, it's okay just to make it and have your friends listen to it, and if anybody
Right,
else
yeah.
listens to it and finds it, that's cool, and you know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you were okay with that, then maybe you would be okay with making music again in the future.
Yeah,
Unless you
yeah.
really wanted to give it another shot, like really,
Right, yeah.
real shot.
I mean, I think there's always like this underlying feeling of every musician, every time that they put something out, you know, like if it were to blow up, that would be like the best feeling in the world
Right.
for them, right? You know, like it's literally like almost every musician's dream, probably, unless they're a musician that records stuff and literally doesn't put it on the internet, you know, and doesn't do anything with it. But I feel like it's very rare in this day and age. But what was the question? What was like?
What was
point
it?
of
I guess I don't really know what I was saying, but I guess the one thing I've taken away as somebody who's created music for a while
Mm-hmm.
is that if you ever are doing some kind of art form and you want to have satisfaction and happiness from it, you need to manage what's your expectation.
Yeah.
So like if your expectation is to, I'm just going to create these songs or these albums, and they're going to be out there, and if my friends will listen to them, and if anybody stumbles on it and likes it, that would be great. But otherwise, it's just for me, and it's self-satisfactory.
Right.
The other side of it being, I'm going to put this out there, and I want people to hear it, and I want to get famous. I want to make money off of it, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't really know what I was trying to say with that.
I think
If you would
just
make,
said it.
I think I just said it all.
Yeah, you said it all.
Would you ever make music again under the just self-satisfactory,
Oh,
just for fun,
under the
kinda
pretense that it would just like just be
Just
for
for
me,
you.
just because it would be enjoyable.
thing? For expression? Yeah.
Yeah, it's I feel like I would, but I really can't say.
It's just where you're at in life, I guess.
Yeah, it just depends on what all I'm doing, and especially with like what my career would be at the time in the future, and like how much time I would really have to dedicate to doing something like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, but for right now, all of my creative ideas are just kind of linked into the realm of fashion design and, you know, illustrating and trying to like pattern and prototype garments. I'm just trying to do like everything that I can within my skill set as of right now, because I'm still going to school, so there's still a lot that I need to learn.
Yeah. How's that been, kind of navigating this all during, COVID situation and everything?
Oh, it's been, I mean, I feel like the COVID-19 situation hasn't really made it more difficult for me to do the stuff that I'm currently doing, because most of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm just like taking like muslin and just cutting out pieces of scrap fabric essentially, and then just trying to figure out different ways that I can sew things together and see like what creates what. And then other than that, I'm just like looking up YouTube videos or just like looking up tutorials about how to do like really simple and small projects.
But during COVID, you have created your first kind of piece, really, right? Like you have that. Was it the belt that you?
Oh yeah, so I've made like a few different belts, like those utilitarian style belts,
right?
Which I had a small website up at the time that I started making them, but there was a lot that I realized I needed to pull back on. So I took the site down. First off,
I was actually going to mention that because in preparation for this podcast, I was like, all right, let me do a little bit of research here. Let me just do a little background. Entirelyremoved.com password.
Oh, yeah. So the site is no longer available. There's a lot that I realized that I needed to change, and I think that ultimately I need to finish school before I really try to start to before I launch a brand. I really want to take the time to build my skill set and conceptualize what I want the brand to ultimately be and what's going to be unique about it. Like, what's it going to bring to the table?
Sure.
What's it going to bring like to the world of fashion, and what can kind of like set what I'm going to make apart from other similar brands within the realm or genre of clothing that I want to make. So I'm going to be rebranding. I just took the website down. I took everything off the Instagram.
So would you be waiting till after you've gone through school and absorbed the information?
Yeah. Which is really difficult for me, and it's like, because I have so many ideas and I just want to get to work like right now and like pumping out these things and doing all this stuff. But I have to like, it's one of those things that I've tried to teach myself throughout the years, is like to show a little bit of restraint. Yeah. And kind of like hold back and not have this this crazy feeling of like, oh, I need to get everything done like right now. I gotta like.
You're a content master.
Yeah, I guess so.
You're always putting out the content. Yeah, you can always count on Dylan for content,
for better or worse, you know.
So I guess that's the question: is like when you're in school, which is hopefully as long as COVID is still not going to shut down things.
Yeah, I mean, the physical classes will still be there. Half of my classes are going to be online anyway.
But they were already going to be that way.
Yeah, like half of them were. But there's some stuff that you have to be there in person for. But the class size is capped at 12 students.
Oh, okay.
So it's not going to be like, they already have procedures set in place to make it like a safe environment. Yeah. So I feel like that'll be fine. But did you had a question?
I was going to say in terms of while you're in school, creating while you're in school, like you can be putting out anything. You can be painting, you think?
Well, I feel like as I go through the process of learning all of this stuff, I kind of want to just document the process. Yeah. I want to document the process and document the things that I make throughout the process leading up to the end of school, where you have to create a capsule collection. So you have to create anywhere from like 6 to 8 full looks. And you have to create a website and stuff too, and that's like for the very end of school. But I kind of want to just like take pictures, write down notes, like do all this documentation of the entire process that leads up to what is eventually going to be the brand. Right. But I'm probably not going to try to make, release, or sell anything from the brand's perspective until I'm completely done with school. Yeah. Until it's completely wide open and I know that I've gained the skills necessary and I'm like happy with my products, Yeah.
I get that. Definitely makes sense. Yeah. And that's definitely shows restraint.
Yeah,
and, especially when you're talking about something that is self-expression based. Yeah. You're bringing into the mix a career path possibly really with it.
Yeah, the school, so the program is sort of it's aimed towards entrepreneurs. So it's like for people that want to, because it is like an independent school and it's like a part-time 18-month program, there's there's no real diploma. There's no like real degree or anything that you get from it. I mean, you do get like a certification for completing the designer development course from them, like at the end of it. And they are actually recognized as a real school, like by the state. But yeah, it's not the same as like getting a bachelor's degree or anything like that. But it does give you the skills necessary in order to launch your own brand. And that's what I feel like I really need at this point in my sort of like creative endeavors.
So what's it look like after that? So finish school,
okay,
launch the brand. What's the vision?
The vision is to be able to sort of sustain myself off of making and selling clothes, and then working a different job part-time probably. That's like the realistic version. Which will still be really difficult and really hard to pull off. And eventually, I think in launching the brand that I want to launch, I'm probably going to need like a couple people's help. So I would eventually love to have like a separate studio space for making the clothes and stuff, like outside of my own house.
Yeah.
And that would be wonderful. And especially if I had people like working with me to create the stuff, to kind of like you know, get things to flow a lot easier and a lot smoother. We could pump out like more stuff. Yeah, so that's the kind of the end goal, is to basically run and operate my own small clothing brand. And if I need to, then I'll work like the production job that I have on the side, you know, for just like that steady small income that I know will be there. But
when you say production,
for the coffee roastery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. When you say production, I'm picturing like a movie studio.
Oh, no.
Dylan's a big time producer now. The Hangover Part 5.
Damn, dude, I wish. Dude, I'd be raking in
That
real money.
That could be you.
That could be me.
So that's definitely exciting. I mean, it's kind of hearing what is on the horizon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have a lot of other things, but with all of the art forms that you've been a part of and that you've kind of traveled through and with, what is the what would people remember Dylan by? Like, what's...
Oh, I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea. I mean, oh man, I don't know.
All these things.
Hopefully it's just like everything.
Modpodge of things,
you know? Hopefully it's everything. Like, I hope people just remember me. Well, I don't know. I still have a lot left to accomplish. Like, that's my thing, you know?
So if you had your way, you know, there'd be some kid walking down the streets of New York, you know, wearing Dylan Pritchard clothing.
Right, yeah.
Listening to Dylan Pritchard music.
Yeah.
What else is there? Painting a Dylan... No, that doesn't make sense.
Like selling prints of my artwork.
Selling prints of art.
While listening to music that I've made and wearing a full outfit created by me.
While eating food...
that I cooked.
That you cooked.
Perfect.
While being Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, that's ideal. That's actually me.
The cloning. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's actually me. So that's
actually you.
That's just me in the future.
It's cool. It's a Mod Podge. So this was awesome. This was great for, I don't know if, you know, listeners
Thank
here.
you. I had a great time.
This was great for me, too, because you are definitely one of the only people I know that has focused in with this amount of intensity in all these different art forms. I know people who do art. I know people who do music, obviously. I don't know people who do fashion, but I know you. I don't know people who have filtered through these things, and I'm not going to say like mastered each one, because that's kind of an immature way of putting it, but have gone through each of them.
Right,
and, added it to your repertoire.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely given me some more insight into why you made the decisions that you've made, and kind of what's in store for you in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
For having me on.
Where can people find your stuff?
Oh, my stuff?
Some plugs.
Oh, I don't have a whole lot of stuff right now. It's not stuff that I want to promote.
Okay.
I'm keeping it low key.
You're keeping it under wraps until
Yeah, but my visual art Instagram is at Dylan Paints.
Instagram at Dylan Paints.
So that's one. And then I have a very small time fashion account for my outfit account. and that is at Worn by Dylan.
Worn by Dylan.
Yep.
That's
it.
right.
And there's also Worn by Dylan on YouTube. But
That's right.
I have only uploaded 2 videos. I wouldn't pay it that much attention.
So that's not going to go too much farther.
Nah, probably not.
Okay. Because there's money in YouTube reviews. If you get,
yeah, you're right.
You get to Fantano level.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, my ideal thing was like, oh man, I want to do YouTube reviews of these like smaller time brands so that they send me stuff.
Oh yeah.
That was that was the thing. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm like, whatever. If I really want it, I'll just pay for it.
Right. No, that's definitely good. Thank you for being on.
Of course.
Hopefully it was fun to talk about some of this stuff.
Oh, it was great.
I had a great time.
I had a great time as well.
If you want to follow Harrow Podcast, we will be having future episodes at Harrow Recordings 666. Ha ha ha.
Haha.
And that's it. If you have any other questions for Dylan or for me or for future topics or anything like that, DM me, and we'll take a look at that. And have a great night.
Peace.